Let me ask you this. How can you contribute to your community, your environment, so that every single member, all of us, can feel liberated and safe?
Let me introduce Serge, Ashley, Dahlia, and Sati, who will perform Summer Pliskow's play, Thinking Outside the Box.
Race is a word. It's not a definition.
I just feel so different from everyone, like they don't understand me.
I don't think we can ever move forward unless people are honest with themselves.
How can any single individual be defined by one word?
I feel like if I fuck up, being the only person of color, then the next time another person of color comes by, people might not give them the same opportunity.
I'm just belittled, dehumanized, and that's the biggest shock of discrimination.
So, what does a person who gives a presentation on diversity look like? Why can't it be any single person in this room?
Confusion, denial,
acceptance,
disbelief,
Partial.
inclusive.
These are just some of the words that come to mind when I think about diversity. But then again, that's just me, how I grew up. I mean, that's just me. It's how I grew up. You guys are looking at me thinking, how is this young white girl giving a presentation on diversity? But what you don't see is that I'm actually Hispanic. Or no, white, light-skinned, light-eyed, half Jewish, half Hispanic. I'm not a real Hispanic. Because that's how it's felt. I've felt confused and shunned by society for trying to grasp onto who I am and where I came from. But when I was growing up, I thought celebrating Hanukkah and Christmas was just about the coolest thing ever. I mean, I remember one Christmas we had a literal feast. We had empanadas, black beans, yuca, mojo. I mean, my grandma woke up really early in the morning to just start frying food in the backyard. I took this food to school once, and I remember this girl teased me for it. She thought it was disgusting, just because it was different. No, it wasn't the stereotypical turkey sandwich on white bread.
Hey, $1 for a rhyme? It'll only take a little time. Give me a word and I'll spit out a beat. Help a young artist that's living on the streets.
Williams. Derek Williams. He's a spoken word artist. He speaks his mind, his heart. It's raw, unfiltered. But art creates a safe space for conversation. Something I realized through my own process, and something I continue to realize as I listen to Derek's words. I mean, really listen. He says the subconscious truths in the back of our minds. Now, I asked what he thought about diversity in our country once, and he beautifully compared it to a pot of gumbo.
One big, beautiful pot of gumbo set to boil, seasoned with the history of our people, turmoil. A melting pot of different cultures and races, identities, ethnicities, the color of our faces. A melting pot of different shapes and sizes. Thoughts and opinions on tomorrow rises.
I was hesitant at first to speak to you all, but I realized the importance of this event and how much I wish I had something similar when I was at a university. So this is for everyone who feels like they don't belong here. Or anywhere, really, because we've all been there.
We're all humans, people of struggle. But sometimes people just can't juggle the idea that we're both different and the same. We're all equal in the way we humans became. Brains wired, our hearts fired. Show empathy, love, and never lose you when push comes to shove.
I was born and raised in Miami, Florida. Growing up in Miami, I was exposed to so much culture. Everyone was different, and I truly felt a warmth, a sense of home, and just an awareness of diversity in the people around me. Growing up wasn't a challenge. We had that melting pot, that pot of gumbo, we used to call it.
I was invited to an alumni event hosting Nadej Armand as a guest speaker on the topic of diversity. Her everyday stories were the most eye-opening, opening up to the idea that every little thing adds up, that it's all important.
And I was raised by my two Haitian immigrant parents. A little bit about their backstory because I feel like it's important in understanding who I am. Well, my parents filed for political asylum in the US, saved up every penny, and got on a boat. The crazy part is they got on a boat they knew was going to sink, hoping that a Coast Guard would come find them. I mean, luckily one did, but can you imagine taking that risk? They wound up waiting in Guantanamo for 3 months before making it into the US, and then they just started from the bottom up. I can't imagine what was going on in their heads.
Make a list. Avoid the fist. Mark a check when you reach the deck. You cross the waters. Check. Sign the papers. Check.
Learn English, check.
Go to school, check.
Find a job. Check. Have some kids. Check.
Buy a house, check.
You are the person that determines your life and what you do. Pursue the American dream that really, it wasn't built for you.
To me, discrimination is a bit more pick and choose, like leaving a person out or shunning them. But racism, it's a blunt force. It's an isolation of a group, not taking them into account as human beings really, belittling them. I've seen it. Hell, I've been through it.
I met Angelique at Nadej's presentation. Well, she approached me actually, wanting to talk about diversity and discrimination. All of it. I got to record her and I just listened. About an hour later, and I left with a better understanding of myself. In a positive way. The negativity spreads like wildfire, just radiates from one person to the next. But to find somebody that validates your own beliefs in yourself, that makes you want to take action, that's hard to come by.
You see, I'm the only person of color in my major, and I feel like I've had to talk about my race now more than ever before. And I've had to walk on eggshells. I feel like my work is rated harder and judged with stricter guidelines than my classmates. I don't know, I was just expecting more open-mindedness at a university level from students and staff. I mean, don't get me wrong, it hasn't been all bad. Living in the dorms has been one of the best experiences. We just sit in the common room and listen to music of all cultures and eat food of all cultures. We created a safe space to just be, to live, to share who we are with the people around us.
Safe spaces should not be taken for granted. I mean, that is something that deserves to be chanted. Why won't you let me be free? Live in the moment. Live to be me.
I had someone comment on my skin color once, like, wow, you're pretty for a dark girl. Do I have to be dark or light? Can I just have skin and move on with it? I just want to be myself, be me.
See, she's a student here, learning every day, allowing for her brain to be sculpted like clay. But if this is what we're teaching in our schools, then we're denying future generation the tools to become those people that we respect. Look, all I'm saying is we have to be checked.
My challenge really started when I got to the university. I walked onto campus and I'm sorry, but I had never seen so many blonde people in my life. I mean, it was fine, it was just a shock. There definitely wasn't as much culture on this campus as I thought there would be. So I definitely didn't feel like I fit in. I had never doubted who I was, my confidence, my intelligence, until I came here. I started being confined and labeled by my race. I was the black girl, and it was hard for me to cope with that. I didn't feel like I could make any real friends. My freshman year, I lived in the dorms, and my roommate was white, and I obviously was black, and she did not even treat me like a human being. We had this AC problem one time. She kept the AC too cold in the common area, and of course she had to get the RA involved. You know, she actually said to me, if you're so cold, why don't you just put on more clothes?
These experiences that I was having on campus, both the good and the bad, actually made me realize even more who I was, what I stood for.
Speaking to people like Nadej and Angelique made me come home to myself. Think about who I am, who I wanted to be. They weren't the same thing. I mean, I always understood the culture and the history inside me. I always knew that I was just a beautiful mixture, a combination of all of my ancestors inside me. But I never knew where I belonged, what category I fit into, what box to check. I mean, to society, I was laughed at to consider anything except for white. But for me, I'm more than one box.
I joined a club my freshman year, but something happened and I had a really bad falling out. Just one thing after the next made me feel like I didn't belong here. And being the child of immigrant parents, I was the first in my family to attend a university, so I had to be on top of everything for myself. I had to make sure phone calls were made, papers were signed. I needed that financial aid support, but my parents didn't even know what a FAFSA was, so it didn't make it any easier. But what did help was meeting my friend. Annette Claremont was her name. She was a master's student at the time, and she really took me under her wing. And she was a chemistry major as well, so she not only helped me with the social aspect with my schoolwork as well. She had been through a lot of what I was going through. I can hear the voices still haunting me.
Better run, better not be late.
You're African American, you got a different fate. I'm on the chemistry track, but no one believes it because I'm black.
People always saying, can you really be that smart? God, if only they can find it deeply buried in their hearts.
To see I'm walking on a tightrope so tall,
I don't know what will happen to you if you fall.
but I didn't fall, and I think I'm most proud of that. I slowly found where I felt most at home and where to avoid. Sororities and frats were always a big no for me. My friend and I went to a fraternity party once and never again. While we were there, we actually saw a guy get beat up because of his race. Like the guy punching him actually said he didn't like him because of his race. I felt the Greek life culture represented something I couldn't support. So I found my niche and I stuck to it. But I found myself falling into the same cliquey habits that other people had, that I had judged other people for. Only hanging out with people of my own race, judging people by what they look like. I mean, that wasn't me, but that's what I found myself doing, and that in itself was shocking to me. I found this following me after graduation too, how as adults in society, people aren't satisfied until they define you by their own terms.
Stereotypes blurted with a laugh and a smile. I mean, we're just joking, right? So it ain't vile. We all have thoughts about those not the same, but we say we're inclusive, so we don't get blamed. Drifting to a time of just checking a box. Louder each day, this fake diversity. It talks.
I mean, this idea of checking a box is what causes this quota dilemma and this idea of being diverse on paper. But it's not real diversity. Not when it comes to human interactions. I finally realized that I'm the only person who gets to decide who I am and what I'm defined as. Me. I'm the keeper of my own fate. I am the captain of my soul, as William Henley once wrote. I realized that we all have a story to tell, and every story deserves to be shared. Every story matters.
But then sometimes in my classes I feel stranded. It's a drastic shift I haven't been able to wrap my hands around. Like with staff, I don't really feel like there's anyone in my department that I feel comfortable talking to or that I could look up to. I want to see more true diversity, not just on paper. Like, yes, you brought us all here, but what are you going to do about it? Nothing. And we're saying nothing because we're afraid to talk about it. Like it's just this pile under the rug that no one wants to talk about. And I find it funny that the people who want to talk about it are never the people who need to talk about it. I mean, everybody's got some kind of hate. Even me. Hate is everywhere. But why? When you think about it, none of us are really American. The thing about American culture is it's not just one, it's many cultures in one. And unless you're Native American or of that descent, you're not really from here. Your ancestors were born somewhere else and they settled down here. I mean, I was born here and I've been walking to class and had people yelling at me, screaming, "Go back home!"
Just a reflection on how the times roam.
Highest tension since the civil rights era.
Like a pulled string society shares a
Fear of snapping at any point in time.
Drifted to the acceptance that we've come over time.
Better think, better act, tell me what do we do?
Turn that pain into love and let it become something new.
For me, it's hard. Because I can sit and see all of these things happening, hear these stories. But if we remain silent, are we part of the problem?
I've learned from my experiences. I've learned about myself, to be myself. We're becoming ostracized in our ideas. I think if every viewpoint was listened to, no matter how horrendous or good or bad, we'd all be heard equally. As you're experiencing university life, don't be afraid to speak up. There is no right answer. So just be yourself, enjoy who you are, and be proud of it.
What would I say back then? Knowing what I know now, talk about it. Don't be afraid to talk about it. But most importantly, be the change you want to see in the world. I know it sounds ambitious, but how we interact with others really does make a difference. I learned that the hard way. things people said to me and things I said to other people.
Listen. Really listen. I did. And I realized there's a difference between hearing and listening. So listen. It's like they say.
Do unto others as you would do unto yourself. It's the golden rule that we all forget.
Take a stand on the issue, know where you stand, and be informed.
Be less reactionary and more proactive.
If you see something wrong, strive for change. Emotional safety has far too wide a range.
Act now before it's too late.
Be happy, be kind, and beware what you might find. Because this pot of gumbo, it ain't so colorblind.
Add diversity to the list of things we want to be preeminent in. Don't settle. Don't settle.
Do what's right.
And don't be just another box for someone else to check.
One big, beautiful pot of gumbo set to boil, seasoned with the history of our people, turmoil. A melting pot of shapes and sizes, but we still judge each other by the color of our faces.
I got to know each one of these individuals personally. Got to know who they are, and they got to know who I was. And that in itself is all I could ask for. For me, for every one of you in this room, for the country that we live in, to regard each other as exactly who they are. To listen. Do what you did here today. So thank you. Thank you for listening. And before I go, let me ask you this. How can you contribute to your community, your environment, so that every single member, all of us, can feel liberated and safe?
Thank you. So we've got like 5 or 7 minutes just to open up the floor for you all for some feedback and any questions you might have about the process or about the play, anything you might have to the actors. When I started talkback discussion with most of the students, I start by getting the conversation flowing by how many of you identified with a character in the play, just by a show of hands. Yeah, how many of you may have identified with Audrey, the main narrator of the play? Someone with some different boxes to check. Anybody want to speak about that experience?
Yeah, I think I really resonated with that character because she talked about how she was Hispanic and white, right? Hispanic and white.
Jewish.
But Jewish. But then she was immediately, like by everyone else, like regarded as white, as Jewish, you know, like they totally overlooked the other part that makes her who she is, you know. And I think I felt that a lot when I came here to the university, because back home, being from Miami, you know, everyone's Hispanic and everyone's different and everyone has their own culture and it's awesome. And, oh, where are you from is what you're asked, you know, not what are you. It's like, where are you from, you know? And that was really awesome. But then being here, I would always be asked, like, oh, are you black? Are you black? And I was like, no, like there's more to it, you know. There's so much to the culture. And so I really feel like I resonated a lot with that. The character, yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, thanks. There were some other hands. Yeah.
Well, my husband is a Mexican national, and so my children are Mexican American. I mean, that's as you know, as good as you can say that. Both my kids are like, what box do I check? Am I Hispanic? Am I white? You know, and it's strange because sometimes school officials will say you'll get a better chance of getting into college if you check Hispanic. But they feel confused sometimes. It's interesting as a parent to just, you know, I just tell them, I'm like, you know what, you're you, and that's a great part of your dad's culture, a great part of my family and my culture, and then you also make your own culture as an individual, you know, and that has to do with how you go out into the world, how you treat people, and the goodness that you put out there and that you bring upon yourself. So I can totally relate to that.
Yes.
I was told not long ago that I wasn't white. So I'm a mixture, and but I was told that by an adult who, used to be my supervisor here at the university.
Yes, Alex.
Well, I identified a lot with what she was saying because I feel like, I've always had to.
With Nadette? Oh, with Audrey?
With Audrey, yeah, because I think that happens all the time. I've always had to do that. Everybody I know has always had to do that because I think people are not everybody's open to not knowing. Some people feel more confident knowing what they know, so they kind of impose their insecurity on you. And, I just see that all the time. And I think that it's more of a sense that you're smart and confident of what you're exposed to. So if you really haven't had what you know challenged, then you're going to be pretty much scared and want to stay in your comfort zone. But if in an early age, if you learn very quickly that you're always having to kind of represent where you're from and all the places you're from, I think that you always have to do that, and then sometimes it can be scarier than other times as far as, because you never know where you might see that. The next person you're going to meet that really doesn't know is confident, as comfortable as you are. So you just got to have to be, just become good at helping the other person to get to that place that you're so comfortable in, so.
Camilo?
Yeah, I guess identifying with that concept of what people might assume I am, but then having to really say, well, no, like my name's Camilo, so I'm Colombian. I'm not white, I'm not Middle Eastern, I'm not Latino. Like I'm Latino, right? So it's like being able to pass as white, and the privilege that I didn't understand I had for so long. I'm remembering in high school I wear SPF 100 so I wouldn't get any light darker, because then I wouldn't be white anymore. And because I grew up in Gainesville, I was in the rich high school, so it was if you want to make friends with the smart, white, rich kids, you gotta look like them. And so it's just knowing that as a lighter skinned Latino, I have the responsibility to speak out for injustices that I see, because I'm able to. Once I was at a Halloween party, and a friend of mine who was visiting from Bolivia was pissed off some guy at a neighboring house's party somehow, and they would only listen to me to calm them down because he was much darker skinned and he barely spoke English. So it was up to me to not make them fight, and it was really just, it's hard.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. I'm Colombian, the same thing. And I guess culturally in Colombia, it's different because identifying someone as, at least in the section where my family's from, at least identifying someone as their race is not seen as it is in this country. It's more a show of affection and more a show of just brotherhood and sisterhood and unification. Because if there's one country on earth that's very proud of to be patriotic, it's Colombia. And I feel the exact same way, where you have to kind of walk that tightrope of, here, am I white? Am I Latino? Where do I fall along that line? So it was just nice to hear. It's literally the same.
Yes, and yes. We'll go there and then Christy.
About this, I think it's somehow it depends on the majority of the group. Because back home, it's not racism, but it's kind of interesting. It's just I don't know, labeling. Because all the white people, we call them Bazungu Muzungu, and that is it. Whenever they see a white, that's their name. Whenever they see a white, have you seen a Muzungu passing there? Have you seen Muzungu there? So when you come home, don't be surprised when people are calling you Muzungu. That is your name. Right. Muzungu, that is it. I don't know, like, I don't think it's racism, but I think it's, I don't know, maybe because we don't have so many in Uganda, but that is it. Whoever will find you on the street, you'll just hear, if you hear Muzungu, just know it's you.
I just want to say thank you because it's, and also as I'm an actor too, and I remember performing on campus, and it had to do with sex ed, and this was just such a wonderful, thoughtful, true experience, as opposed to don't do this, don't do that, and I just really appreciated that, and your guys' performances in it. It was really honest, and also it's been a while since I was in university, and being a white blonde girl of privilege, coming from a small town where, well, the country really, where I was surrounded by white people, I didn't realize that. I'm just becoming educated in all these things in the last decade or so, that it's becoming such more of a conversation, and so it's so, I just find it so refreshing and inspiring to know that this is what's being talked about on campus right away, and I love that part about, like, reach out, talk to other people from other cultures, like build those friendships, and I've learned so much by doing that with my friends of other cultures and backgrounds, so good on you guys.
Last thought, and then we should move. We have to schlep over campus. Yeah.
Well, just I wanted to ask a question, but then also just say that I too have been told to put more clothes on, you know, because they wanted to keep the room cold, and I was freezing. So I just identified with that feeling of, like, you know, I'm the only one that, you know, has to put the coat on and, you know, triple layer or whatever. But what do you find in terms of, like, being able to bridge some of those things? Like, you know, if I just want to connect with people who are of different ethnic background, you know, I like to ask them, well, what's your background? Where are you from? Is that offensive? If I'm just saying, well, you know, where are you from? You know, and then talk about the country where they're from and unique experiences. What questions can we ask to facilitate the fact that we are interested in you as a person, despite, you know, you look different than me?
Well, I think it has to do with not trying to treat someone like a commodity sort of thing, because there's a difference between being asked, like, where are you from and what are you?
Okay.
Or
So
like,
the where are you from resonates okay. You know,
Yes,
it's not.
because where are you from really, it's more of a personal question, but what are you kind of means, like, I see you and you're different and I want to label you, and most of the time they don't want to know anything past that.
Trent?
I think it goes to intention when you ask that question, where are you from? Because sometimes when people do ask that, where are you from, it's how they say it, and your intention behind how they say it, where are you from? And it's sometimes it can come off very like what are you? Who are you? What are you? So it just depends on how it's said and the concept of how it's said.
I would say accept the answer that they give you.
Yeah.
Because, like, I've had someone say, where are you from? And I say, oh, Fort Lauderdale. And they're like, no, but where are you really from? And I'm like, Fort Lauderdale. Where are your parents from? Fort Lauderdale.
And I think one big thing too is to not bring in your own preconceived notion. So in my case, not all Colombians are drug dealers. So take that out of your head and listen to the answer. Listen to the answer. Like she said, listen to the answer of what we give you and just accept that for what it is. Because if you're really trying to educate yourself and really trying to expose yourself, then your intention is to listen to what it is, not just ask to check off the box of saying, yep, well, I asked you what you were, so I'm diverse. Well, it goes beyond that. He was like eager to think.
I just really wanted to say one thing to that, because that's the standard in Miami. You know, like
Okay.
you can care less of your name. You know, what's gonna come next is no, but where are you really from? And I was just having a conversation with a cousin of mine because we came from Chicago, and I'm Haitian, by the way. And before I went to school, my mom told me, you know, you're Haitian. I said, okay, no problem. So I wasn't gonna, you know, let that go as soon as I get into school. But I would see other Haitian American students say, oh no, I'm not Haitian, I'm black, because fitting in was just so important. So there's a lot of that goes on. You know, like I grew up. You know, you say your name, you know, your town, you know, because my cousin used to say, oh, I'm from Southside Chicago. No, where are you really from? Hazelcrest? You know? I'll tell you the street, you know? I guess because that's where people feel most comfortable. You know, your country. I mean, at least in Miami. But outside of Miami, you know, they need a little bit more for them to really know who you are. So, I mean, that is, you would be surprised when you step out into the world how much people, what do they hold on to that makes them feel comfortable with you? And they mean well.
Yeah.
They really do. Not everybody's coming with bad intentions. That's just how they've learned. So I've learned to just, you know,
Well, and
just.
sometimes if I meet someone, even that is obviously American, but they speak with an accent, where are you from? You know, are you from Boston? Are you from New York? I'm from the South. Are you from, you know, and so
But they could
that's
have been
me.
living here for 50 years in the United States.
but
You
that,
can't let that accent go. It doesn't go.
no, yeah, but it's almost a segue into a more in-depth conversation. So that to me is like, that's like my go-to. Like, where are you from? So, you know, maybe intention does have something to do with it.
That is a very interesting
I
book.
wish we could keep this conversation going. But I just have, because we've gone 5 minutes over, and I want to be respectful that Jill and Jenny are still in the middle of something. And we can continue this conversation this afternoon, but this is beautiful to see because this is what this play is designed to do.
Yeah.
And thank you all for having us.
Thank
and,
you.
We'll see, I'll be back this afternoon.